Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to another edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Andrew Paterson, Michael Remis with you. Got a banger for you today. We're already fired up to welcome in the Turtle Man himself, the legendary Milt Stegall, and Milt will join us coming up in about 20 minutes. And Mike McIntyre as well. And, obviously we were going to be talking a little bit about the Winnipeg Jets offseason, Mike's thoughts on where things are at. But the big news today is the official retirement of Bruins legendary center Patrice Bergeron. And many people, myself included, have thought that Boston might have been one of the best landing spots for Mark Scheifele. What's interesting right now is that, they don't have a ton of cap space. Connor Hellebuyck is still here. They've got to sign Jeremy Swayman. I'm not entirely sure there's a fit for a potential trade as long as Hellebuyck is still part of the Winnipeg Jets scene right now, and it certainly looks like that is going to be the case. But Joe Haggerty's going to jump on with us. We'll talk about just what this loss means to Boston and this team going forward, as well as some memories of the great Bergeron. And then after that, we'll bring Mike on, get his thoughts on Bergeron's retirement, and if he thinks that there could be a fit between Winnipeg and Boston down the road for a potential deal if Mark Scheifele is still on the trade block. So it's going to be a real fun show. Milt Stegall with a little CFL and NFL talk, and then we will get to Joe Haggerty and Mike McIntyre. Shout out to everyone that's with us right now. If you're with us on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button. And make sure you've hit that red subscribe button. And for all of you podcast listeners, thanks for making us a part of your day. Make sure to jump on YouTube at some point and subscribe to the channel. And, of course, if you are with us on YouTube, you can find the WST audio version right after we finish the show every day in time for your drive home. In the car, search Winnipeg Sports Talk wherever you get your favorite podcast. Just before we get Michael in here, a big shout out to our friends and sponsors at Coolbet, Princess Auto, the Winnipeg Gold Eyes, Breezy Bend and Assiniboia Downs, Aikens Lake, Little Brown Jug, BP, Royal Sports, Consolidated Supply, Nick and Nicky DQ and F Apparel, Wallace and Wallace, Vita Health Fresh Market, Canadian Club, Manitoba Battery, Aquatech, and Modern Man Barbershop. And we'll do a Patrice Bergeron related why not question of the day for our friends at Not Autocorp, Overly at Waverly and McGillivray. Let's get Remis in here and get things going. What's going on, dude?
Yeah, feeling good. I was happy to see the Bergeron retirement announcement. I don't think we have as many people here as when they announced what Barry Trotz was fired, but let the speculation begin. First of all, what an incredible career Patrice Bergeron. He just won the Selke. For how many times has he won it? Played for 20 years. He probably could still keep going, but after so many seasons, almost 1,300 regular season games, plus 170 playoff games, you've been playing for 20 years. But it takes a toll on the body, and, coming off the disappointing end, I think they kind of knew they were going for it. They traded away. They don't have a first, second, or third round pick in this upcoming year, and then they trade another first-round pick this year as well. But they were really going for it, and they fell short against Florida Huss. So I guess they kind of saw it coming, but it's crazy to think he's still on the top of his game. Played for 20 years, played for Team Canada. What a great career, Patrice Bergeron, hanging it up. And now the Bruins, how are they going to move forward and come back after this past season where they've had one of the best regular seasons of all time? Fell short in the playoffs. Now you don't have Bergeron, and you are right up against the cap. So I'm not sure how they replace him. But I think for that standpoint, that makes it very interesting. But just not Bergeron, again, incredible career.
Yeah, obviously the Cup champ in 2011. He won the Clancy in 2013. He was the Marc Messier Leadership Award winner in 2021. It was the all-decade second-team center for the 2010s to 2020, and a six-time winner of the Selke Trophy. A lot of people said it should just be called the Bergeron Trophy, considering just how dominant he was in that conversation for so long. And, as far as being a winner, one of the most decorated winners in NHL history. He World Championship gold medal, World Junior gold medal. He was the World Junior MVP, Winter Olympics gold medal, Stanley Cup winner, World Cup of Hockey gold medal. I know there's the there's the triple gold club. I mean, basically, he's literally won everything there is to win. And as a member of Canada, 7 times he represented Canada on the international stage, 6 gold medals. The only time was in the World Championships in 2006 that he was not part of a gold medal winning team. So one of the great players to play 1,000 games, 1,000 points. He's going straight to the Hall of Fame. But I think the aftermath of this announcement today, Remis, in the short term, is what this means for the Boston Bruins. And I'm not sure you could have a bigger hole in an organization and in your depth chart than when Patrice Bergeron walks out the door. They do not have a lot of center depth. And with David Krejci off the books as well, you're basically talking about your top 2 guys. It's Pavel Zacha, it's Charlie Coyle, and then, Morgan Geekie came over. He was signed on a 2-year deal as a free agent. And then, guys like Patrick Brown and Jesper Vogt that can play. There's certainly not another Bergeron walking in the door. And of course, that gets a lot of people talking about, could there be a fit with a player like Mark Scheifele and the Boston Bruins if a change of scenery is necessary for 55? The more I look at it, though, it's really hard, as long as Hellebuck's here right now, to find a deal that makes sense for the Bruins and Jets, considering what the Jets would be looking for and what the Bruins have to move.
Yeah, and just on Bergeron, it's funny. Like, I think of him more as, for me, with the World Juniors in 2005 in North Dakota, Grand Forks, where he played with Crosby and Corey Perry. And it's funny, he was only playing in that because of the NHL lockout. And, he had already played in the NHL, and he was a superstar at that tournament. And it's funny, he actually won the Worlds in 2004 before winning the World Juniors, which is not a normal thing that happens. But as you said, he was on Canada 2010, which was an awesome team, 2014 as well, and the World Cup of Hockey. Remember the World Cup? Anyways, and you look at the Bruins now, and he was on a pretty cheap deal. He signed for his cap hit was $2.5 million, but there were some performance bonuses, $2.5 million of that, and a signing bonus. His cap hit was 2.5. He had a 1.5 base salary, which you talk about cap circumvention with Vegas. I think that's the biggest cap circumvention. A guy who was making $7 million at the Selke Trophy winner taking a $1.5 million base salary contract. Anyways, they did that, and so it's not gonna it opens up a lot of room for them, but it does open up a big hole as first line center. And see people in chat already saying, "Oh, how about a Scheifele to Bruins trade?" But we looked at that. What do the Bruins have to give up? Kevin Cheveldayoff said, "Hey, these guys, Hellebuck and Scheifele, are still big parts of our team." And then if they did trade Scheifele to the Bruins, they're not getting a Scheifele-like player back, and the Jets are going to have a hole at center. And the more we talk about this, I do start to wonder more and more if the Jets really try to take a run at re-signing Scheifele, because they don't have anyone to replace him. It seems like no one really wants to trade for him, or it would have happened. Maybe he tries to test free agency after this season and see what he can get there, but I don't know. Maybe they're kind of stuck together here, and the Jets can give him a really nice 5-year, $8 million contract. I don't know. I'm just throwing it around. I don't know.
Listen, I hear more and more people speculating that. I think I still am in the of the opinion I would be stunned if that happened. I think that, with what happened in the second half of last season and what had happened the year before, I think it's pretty clear to both sides that, moving on is probably in the best interest. And listen, people can blame Blake Wheeler for everything all they want, but it was more than Wheeler. And I think Mark Scheifele was right there as part of that culture that we've talked so much about and so much has been made of right now. And if you're turning the page and you really want to allow a new culture to be created within this Winnipeg Jets hockey club, it probably means a couple guys moving on. And certainly they felt it was important enough to buy Blake Wheeler out and allow him to move on. And I certainly think the plan was, and I'm not sure anything this offseason despite what the market has been, has really changed that. So, I mean, could he come back for a time next season? I mean, yeah, for sure. He's still under contract right now, and if there's not a deal that makes sense, they're not going to make it. But I am of the opinion that extension won't happen. I mean, here's a why not question of the day for folks right now for a not Autocorp at Waverly and McGillivray. Of Connor Hellebuck or Mark Scheifele, who do you think is more likely to get an extension? There's a very good probability that neither will get extended by the Winnipeg Jets. But if one of them did, is it Hellebuck or is it Scheifele? Interested in your thoughts on that. Hit us up in the chat. And for those of you listening on the podcast, you can always fire us an X at Sports Talk. Sports Talk WPG. Am I doing that right, Remis? That's what it is
man,
now?
I think you nailed it there. Yeah, you can fire us an X. Yeah, we just X'd out that the show is live. I'll answer the question. I think I'm going to go with Scheifele because I think you've seen it around the league. I think it's easier to find a goalie than it is number one center. I always say, like, there's only 30 spots for a starting goalie in the NHL. I don't think there's more than 30 capable goalies of starting. I don't know. I think they just again, they don't have a replacement ready for either player. But I think
we forgot the fact that Mark Scheifele, we call him a number one center, finished last season on left wing.
Look, he scored 40 goals last year. Has they already traded away Dubois? Like, who's gonna score on this team? I know, like, Mark Scheifele, people, we hear this in chat. It's like, well, I know plus minus doesn't really matter, but Mark Scheifele had minus 16 last year. That counts for something. Well, if you look into it, at 5-on-5, he was only, plus one at 5-on-5, and a lot of those minuses were, empty net goals. I think it was like 12 empty net goals on minuses, and a couple shorthanded against. So at 5-on-5, I don't think he's as bad as people say. I mean, probably not great for a number one center to be even, but he does make up for it on the power play. Got a lethal shot. Maybe there's a match here. I would be weary of, both players has coming up to 30, like giving long-term deals to players over 30. I don't think that's really happening that much anymore. But I mean, he was the number one draft pick here in 2011. He was their first pick ever. Maybe something to be said wanting to have him around. Although Hellebuck would be your franchise player too going forward. It's a tough call. The poll right now, who's more likely to get extended? Hellebuck leading 59% to 41%. So I do think that's a good question.
Yeah, I mean, listen, as I said, I would have expected if we were doing this why not question of the day a month and a half ago, and there was an option that neither would be, I think that would have been like 90-95%. I mean, as I said, I don't want to. I mean, we spent enough time on this, and I know I've gotten a little bit of a rep for kind of bagging on Scheif, but I mean, we can't forget about how these last couple seasons have gone. And listen, if you are really trying to, create a new leadership group and culture carriers for this team, it takes some changes. And I'm sorry, I mean, just Blake Wheeler is not going to be. It's not going to flip that switch. And to be honest, I think this would be the best thing for Mark Scheifele too. Get an opportunity as well in a new organization. I mean, a place like Boston would be fascinating to see how he, how it would turn out. I mean, I know there's some people you're going to replace Patrice Bergeron with the guy that doesn't play defense. I'm not sure that you wouldn't get a different Mark Scheifele. I mean, especially playing for a contract, which he will be this season, regardless of where he is. Going to a team with that sort of a pedigree, a tradition of winning, a level of competitiveness. I mean, it's almost expected in a place like that. And I mean, who knows? They might be able to get the best out of him, and it might be a great spot for a player like that to move. Although we'll ask Joe Haggerty about this, of the two guys that are allegedly on the market, Mark Scheifele and Elias Lindholm, both with very team-friendly deals with 1 year left. Although, a $1.2 million less for Lindholm, who's I think at 4.9. What is the better fit? But the bottom line is that Patrice Bergeron ain't walking through the door, and I don't think either of those players would be able to kind of carry that load, but it's unrealistic to ask anybody to expect that. However, if you're looking for a 200-foot player, you're probably looking more to Elias Lindholm than Mark Scheifele when it comes to me. But I'm interested to hear what Mike has to say, and we're gonna have Joe come on first, and then we'll have Mike Remis, so we can sort of hear what the story in Boston is, get Joe's thoughts on a potential fit for Mark Scheifele, and then we get into does it make sense for the Winnipeg Jets coming back on the other side if Connor Hellebuyck is still here? And God, we spent enough time talking about Swayman and Ullmark and their situation right now in net. You've got Laurent Brossoit here. You've got Connor Hellebuyck here. I don't think they've got room right now to make a deal for a goaltender coming back unless there's something imminent with Connor Hellebuyck or done before that happens.
Yeah, so I agree. It would probably be a two-part move where you trade Scheifele for Swayman, then trade Hellebuyck to someone for a guy, and you'd need a center. So we'll have to see what happens, but I think the smart money right now has on both these guys coming to training camp and maybe one of them walking for nothing at the end of the year, or do they trade them at the trade deadline? Because I think they're going to be in contention for a playoff spot, and they're going to have to make a tough decision if they're going to sell right at the deadline, if maybe they're a couple points out or a couple points in, or say, hey, you know what? We got what we needed from these players. We want to take a run here, and we're going to hang on to them as a quote-unquote self-rental. So big decisions coming up for Kevin Cheveldayoff, and that's with those two players. And again, we haven't even mentioned the defense where you got the seven guys. Like, what's going to happen here? Heinola is and the Moose the whole year, and Declan Chisholm's the extra D, and they signed Stanley is just going to be status quo, it seems like. I know we've talked about these tough decisions on D, and they seem to be just hanging on to everyone, and like they did last year and lost Johnny Kovacevic. And this year, I guess, Chisholm's the healthy scratch, or do they send down Capobianco? I'm not sure. It seems like we're making. But again,
we can't
making a lot about nothing here.
You can't really freak out about those things in the middle of July because there is still a lot of time. But there are some things that need to happen. We'll talk about it with Mike coming up. But first, we're going to hit a little 3-down football with the best to ever do it, Milt Stegall. Just before we bring in Milt, a big shout out to our friends at Modern Man Barber Shops, now with 8 locations in Winnipeg, including the newest locations on either Pembina Highway or Plessis Road. Modern Man Barber Shops offer a variety of grooming services, including haircuts, beard shaping, shaves, color services, and more. Book your look online via modernmanbarber.com for an appointment, and give them a follow on Instagram at Modern Man Barber Shops. Got some steamy weather coming in here for the summer over the next couple weeks. People will be thinking about pool time, and hey, why not make 2023 the year you take the plunge with Aquatech? Visit aqua-tech.ca to design your own custom pool. Their team can provide on-the-spot pricing from designers as well as financing options that suit you. And whole home renovations start with Aquatech as well. With thousands of renos as their foundation, let them upgrade any space in your home. Aquatech's ready to make your reno dreams a reality. Learn more about design, pricing, and financing options at aqua-tech.ca. We got another beautiful weekend coming up, a long weekend in a couple weeks. People are going to be making the most of their summer. And with whatever you're using with your family to have a great time this summer, you got to power it up, and you need batteries. And Manitoba Battery is the local option with the best prices in town, the best service, and the most convenient buying process. Whether you need something for a boat, a camper, a long tractor, a Sea-Doo, an ATV, Donnie and his staff have the best prices in town, beating the pants off the big box stores, and they'll deliver it to you for free anywhere in the city of Winnipeg on a purchase over $60 to save you more time this precious Manitoba summer. It's that simple. ManitobaBattery.com for all your battery needs. Give them a call or pop by and see them at 1026 Logan Avenue. And just as we bring in Milt, big shout out to our friends at Canadian Club, the official spirit of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. And of course, you can grab that CC and Ginger at IG Field, at Manitoba Liquor Marts, or at your favorite beer vendor as well. Available in 473 milliliter cans and in 6-packs. And Canadian Club, the entire family available at your local Manitoba Liquor Marts. All right. It's always a pleasure to welcome in our next guest. We know him as the best to ever do it here in the Peg. 85 is synonymous with the Turtle Man, Milt Stegall, who joins us now from TSN. Milton, what is up, my man? How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Just want to know, can you hear me okay?
Oh, we
okay?
can hear you great. We can hear you great.
Right. I
Almost as good as you look.
No, you didn't have to say it. I was going to actually say it. I know I look good. I just want to make sure I can be heard. So I appreciate that.
Milt, I mean, it's fascinating times in the Canadian Football League.
Yes.
Before we get to some of the other spots, thoughts on the Bombers on their first bye week, 5-2, but with a couple of losses that we're still talking about. I mean, a real beatdown at the hands of BC earlier in the season, and then one of the more bizarre blown leads you will ever see in the Canadian Football League a couple of weeks against Ottawa.
Yeah, I mean, and I guarantee you most teams would love to say I'm 5-2 going into my bye week, but for the Bombers, that's not the case. This is not the Bombers of old, let's be honest. There's been some struggles there. We saw the fashion in which they lost their 2 games. As you mentioned, BC blew them out, and then they allowed a rookie quarterback starting his first game to come back in the fourth quarter. I think he needed 20 points, take him in overtime, and lose that game. So there are some people saying, well, we shouldn't be concerned. No, there has to be some concerns there. My main concern is protecting Zach. I mean, he's been, I think, sacked 18 times this year. It was they gave up 28 sacks last year. And it's not all on the offensive line. It's sometimes Zach holding the ball, or a receiver not breaking off their route, or a running back not blocking. But there has to be some concern there with the way this team is playing right now. Yes, they are 5-2. Yes, they've won 5 of their 7 games, but this is not the Bombers team that we've seen in past seasons.
The offensive line, of course, has been a big topic here. And at times it's looked completely unlike this group that's dominated for the last number of years. In a lot of ways, was the foundation of this team when Kyle Walters built it from the line out on both sides. But then you look at the fourth quarter against Calgary,
yes,
and they roll out there and they run the football for 10 minutes and they squeeze the win out. They did the same thing in the fourth quarter against Edmonton. And listen, obviously Edmonton's had a tough time stopping the run all season long, but there has been some really good periods, at times with games on the line from the Bomber offensive line. But it hasn't been as consistent, and I think that's where the worry is, Milt.
That's the key, consistency. And this team has been the model of consistency since Zach showed up, the end of 2019. They've been pretty much unstoppable. But that has not been the case this year. And teams see that they're vulnerable. In past years, the question would be when they walked on the field, how many points would they win by? And now they walk on the field and against certain teams, and you're saying, are they going to be able to beat this team? So that is the question now. And I mean, it's good from a media standpoint, from a fan who's not a Blue Bomber standpoint, because now opposing teams have opportunities of beating the Blue Bombers. They're not the super team that they once were. And it's crazy that we're saying that because they still are 5-2, but that has not been the case for Bombers in past seasons. So I'm sure, Mike O'Shea being the coach he is, Kyle Walters being the GM he is, if they need to make changes, even though they are 5-2, they'll definitely make some changes.
Just quickly on the Bomber offense, of course, they've been waiting for Kenny Lawler to come back. He came back, made a big impact in that game against the Elks. From an offensive standpoint, Milt, how much does Kenny Lawler bring to the table, not just as an outlet for Zach to catch passes, but maybe opening up room for the other guys in the Bomber offense?
Oh, man, it's crazy. And we were just talking how surprised we were. We knew he was good, but the fact that he hadn't practiced with this team, all season or whatever, he had, maybe 2 or 3 practices with him, and it weren't in pass. He hadn't get hit yet, but the fact that he was able to go out there and do what he did, it's amazing. And he's one of those receivers, and there are some few in the league, maybe 5 or 6, where they don't have to be open. You could have a guy draped over him, and you can throw it up to him. And Zach loves that. He says it makes his job so much easier. And they have a plethora of good receivers, but they don't have anyone on that roster like Kenny Lawler. I don't know how many teams do, but it's special having him back. He's going to make everyone's job easier, as you just alluded to. He demands attention, not from 1, not from 2, maybe 3 guys sometimes. So that's going to open it up even more for Sean and Dembski and Wolotarski and all those other guys. So he's definitely going to make the job easier for everyone involved.
You know what? We'll get to the BC Lions in a minute, but we're already counting down to August 3rd. The Bombers finally have this bye week, and then they'll have a full week of practice. Meanwhile, BC, with the injury to VA, has to go to Edmonton on Saturday and then play on a short week back in Winnipeg on Thursday night. There's a lot of things going in the Bombers' favor for this game, Milt, as far as the schedule goes. But it's pretty clear that I think these guys still remember the butt kicking that they got earlier this year at home, which was kind of shocking considering just how successful they'd been for so long. What do you expect from the Bombers when BC comes to town on the 3rd of August?
It's going to be a thriller. It's going to be a classic. As you just alluded to, they definitely remember that. And I'm sure guys like Adam Bighill is really drilling that into his guys. Like, remember what they did to us, especially being a former BC Lion. Remember what they did to us on our home turf? We couldn't score a touchdown. We couldn't stop them from scoring. So it's going to be a battle. It's not going to be an easy task. These BC Lions are special. And it's not just not having Vernon Adams. It's that defense. Ryan, he has that defense. That defense coordinator has that defense rolling. They are playing some great ball. And they didn't miss a step, even though Vernon Adams got hurt. We knew they were going to win that game because of the way that defense is playing. It's good having a veteran backup like they have at quarterback, but it's all about that defense. They can stop anyone based on what we've seen so far. So those Bombers are going to have to definitely devise a game plan offensively to attack that defense. They have 2 weeks to do it, and they're going to have to come with it to have an opportunity to win the game.
Yeah, I mean, we can we naturally spend more time talking about the quarterback position than any other for obvious reasons. But, I mean, you just nailed it. That team is being led by a defense that, I mean, hell, they came to Winnipeg and gave up 6 points. Another single-digit number on the weekend. And that's a luxury to have when you lose a key player like Vernon Adams. To have a backup like Dane Evans, who looked pretty darn good and sure did a number on the Bombers last year with the Hamilton Tiger Cats, Milt. But, man, that defense and the season that Matthew Betts is having, I mean, borderline historic start.
Yes, it's crazy. And he wasn't talked about at all in that game until the final play when he had the walk-off sack, as we call it. But, I mean, he demands a lot of attention, and that's just freeing up for other guys. And that defensive backfield, those guys are playing with confidence. When we were out there for their opening game, Peters, he told me, we're the best defensive backfield in the league. You can tell everybody we said that because that's how we feel, and that's how we're going to play game in and game out. So it's good watching them play. But as you mentioned, that August 3rd game, and I'm sure they're not looking beyond the Elks because the Elks are in a pressure situation because they're trying to break a streak. But I guarantee you everyone is looking forward to that game against the Bombers August 3rd.
When we're talking about the West, it's been back and forth between Calgary and Saskatchewan in their 2 head-to-head games, both 1-1. And I realize now the team's probably a little different with Trevor Harris out for the majority of the season and Mason Fine now the guy. But I mean, I think it's clearly BC and Winnipeg at the top of the division. It's clearly Edmonton at the bottom. When you look at Saskatchewan and Calgary head-to-head, Milt, I mean, who gets your nod as the better team and the more likely to be a challenge for either Winnipeg or BC in the West Semi?
That's a great question. Right now, because of the way Mayer has played in the last couple of games, I'm going to go with Calgary. I mean, we're finally starting to see what we thought we would see. A big reason why the Calgary Stampeders said bye-bye to Bo Levi Mitchell because they felt they had a legitimate franchise quarterback in Jake Mayer. The first games, we didn't see that. But these last 2 games, he's starting to play some special football. Of course, they weren't able to win this last game, but the way he's looked, the confidence he's playing with, the way he's spreading around the ball, I would have to say definitely the Calgary Stampeders. Saskatchewan Roughriders, their defense has gotten a lot better, but I haven't seen enough out of Fine. So it's definitely the Calgary Stampeders, mainly because of the way Jake Mayer is playing football.
Well, speaking of quarterbacking, and again, this is tough to talk about. We're still kind of can't believe that it happened, that game against Ottawa a couple weeks ago. But I will say this, as a Winnipeg guy who has had the privilege of dealing with Bobby Dice a number of times, if it was going to happen to anyone, I'm glad that it happened to Ottawa. And then they went and did it again. We'll talk about Crum and the difference that he's made. But, Milt, you know Bobby very well.
Yes.
You've seen him before. I've talked a lot about what a great leader of men he is. What do you think that he's doing right now as a head coach? And I mean, they had a lot of bad luck early on, moving down quarterback after quarterback. How much credit does the head coach get for the will that this team is showing week in and week out right now?
He deserves a lot in this situation. And I always say coaches don't win games, but coaches, when you have players who want to play for that coach, that helps out. Because I've been in situations, and I won't name the coaches, where I hated going to work every day because you hated being around the coach. But when you have a guy like Bobby Dice, who's just a great person, not just a great coach, but a great person, guys love showing up every day. They want to win for this coach because you want him around. You want to continue playing for this coach. So that makes your job so much easier. Also with Kahari Jones, who's also an awesome individual. They just have awesome coaches there. Travis Moore. These are great individuals. So as players, when you have great coaches who are great individuals, you will work even harder. You will study even more. You will make sure you're in shape even more to make sure that these coaches get what they deserve. So it's great to see Bobby Dice getting this. He deserves it so much, and I'm definitely happy for him.
That being said, you can't win without quarterback in the Canadian Football League. What have you thought about Crum? I mean, if you just watch the first 25 minutes of the Winnipeg game, You didn't think much because they didn't have a bloody first down. But, man, it's been different over the final 6 quarters. What have you thought about this young man? And do you think he might stick around as a guy making things happen in the 3-down game?
Well, it's hard to say that. I mean, based off what we've seen in the first 2 games he's played and, the game where he got in when Mazzoli got hurt, I would say yes. But we've seen flashes of quarterbacks like this in the past, and next thing you know, they fizzled off. But let's hope that's not the case for this young guy. He seems to be a great individual. I talked to Kahari Jones, their offensive coordinator, about him, and he said he's confident. But as I mentioned, it's not on the panel. It's not overt. It's not in your face. He's a quiet guy, but when he needs to talk, he talks. He handles pressure well. Kahari said he's not concerned when he makes a mistake like he has been with other guys in the past because he's able to put it behind him. He's even killed. So what he's shown in these first 2 games has been special. It's not like he's been a front runner. He's had to come from behind and bring his team back, and he's been able to do it both times, leading 2 victories in overtime. I mean, that's definitely a confidence builder. That definitely lets you know that this guy can play some football, and there is no stage that's too big for him. So let's hope it continues because we need our young quarterbacks playing well. We're losing so many guys. Let's hope that's not the case for him, and he continues playing not only for this year's, but for years in the future.
Well, Milt, I mean, you can lean on a lot of experience in dressing rooms of both good teams and some teams that struggled and had big-time injury issues. Early in the season, I mean, you lose Masoli, you lose your number 2 guy. I mean, it looked really dire, and this team hasn't had a lot of luck and a lot of success over the last couple seasons. What does a win like the one they had against Winnipeg and then following it up with another OT win, what does that do for the guys in the room, especially the veterans that have been there? They seem like a different team against Calgary than they were a couple weeks ago because I guess a little bit of success starts to get that belief going, and it's a hell of a lot more fun to be in these games and winning football games than talking to the media after another loss as talking about what went wrong.
Right. I always say, and I tell this to my sons, the most important trait to being successful is confidence. But to have confidence, you have to be successful. And now they've been successful. They beat the team that's gone to the last 3 Grey Cups, had to come from behind, and then they won another game. Just winning 2 games in a row for the Ottawa Red Blacks is a big confidence builder. And I guarantee you now this next home game, they'll get that fan base back. And when you walk into a stadium and you have a packed house, that says a lot about your team. That lets you know that these fans are behind you. That lets you know that when you make a big play, you're going to hear the roar of the crowd, and there's nothing like that right now. So that team has that snowball. They have it rolling downhill, and now they just have to keep that ball rolling downhill. They can't say to themselves, this is going to be easier task than what we played before because these Hamilton Tiger Cats aren't that good. They can't have that mindset. They have to understand that every single game they have to come with their best game. But I guarantee you Bobby Dice won't allow them to have that mindset, and they'll go out there and they'll give it the best they have. And if they do, I definitely think they can get 3 wins in a row.
Milt, we haven't talked about the lone undefeated team, and that is the Toronto Argonauts. How impressed have you been with the team, and especially Chad Kelly now as the starter in double blue?
Swag Kelly. I mean, we saw a small sample size in the Grey Cup, what he was able to do and go in there and lead his team to victory. But my colleague Jim Barker has been talking about this guy since last year. He's just saying he just needed opportunity. He was watching him back when he was in college and his little time in the NFL, and he said this guy, when he gets his opportunity, he's going to be a great football player. And that's what we're seeing right now. I mean, they have a decent defense. But it's all about Chad Kelly and that running game. I mean, Chad Kelly has been able to do some great things with the ball. He's making his receivers look good. They're good, but he's making them possibly look better than what they are because of the way he devised the game, the way he's able to process things. Ryan Dinwiddie is putting him in great situations. Their young defense coordinator, Corey Mace, is doing a great job. So right now, and if anybody disagrees, they're lying to themselves, the Toronto Argonauts are the best team in the CFL.
You know, we've spent a lot of time talking about this game on August 3rd with BC coming back here. The other game, Milt, that is going to be must-see is that visit of Andrew Harris and the Toronto Argonauts to Winnipeg for the first time since last year's Grey Cup, and the first time Harris will be playing here in Winnipeg since putting on the double blue. I believe that's on the 29th of September. I know you'll be paying attention to that one.
Yes, and he hasn't been involved in the offense as much. I'm sure that's part of the game plan. You know, A.J. Arlette, he's their guy. He is their guy, and Andrew, he's older. But I guarantee you for that game, Ryan Dinwiddie will have some special plays for him. He'll more so than anything, if they get close to the end zone, he's going to make sure Andrew Harris is involved in there, giving some opportunities. Because that will be a touchdown like no other if that can happen. I mean, he won't go out of his way, but he'll give him some opportunities. And it's unfortunate that he didn't get those opportunities last year to come back and play at IG Field. But this year, it's going to be a special game for Andrew Harris. It will be a bittersweet thing. I'm sure he would still love to be in Winnipeg Blue Bomber uniform, but the fact that he's an Argo now and he won the Grey Cup against him last year, and now he's going to get an opportunity to play back at his home spot, it's going to be a special occasion, and we're all looking forward to it.
Well, and just as far as Harris goes, I mean, obviously they're going to keep on riding with the younger Ouellette right now, but I would imagine, Milt, that this is part of, in some ways, a bit of a preservation plan for Andrew Harris, because let's face it, this guy is still as much of a gamer as anybody in the Canadian Football League, and a guy that with your season on the line or in a big game, you want to have the opportunity to contribute. But I think with the amount of mileage on his odometer, if he can, play a secondary role for the first 2/3 of the season, and then when the chips are really down, I think we'll see a heck of a lot more 33.
Yeah, without a doubt. I think you're correct in the game plan they're devising with Andrew. I mean, he's definitely not an every down back anymore. And you don't want him taking that pound. I'm sure he doesn't want to take that anymore. He did it. He's been doing it for over a decade. So he's in a great position right now. He's happy that he's not doing that. He understands when he gets his opportunity, he takes full advantage of him. He's still one of the best blocking backs in the CFL because he understands defense better than probably any running back in the CFL. So he understands his role. He understands when he's time to give AJ a blow, he gets in, and he's still a powerful downhill running back. He's still great out of the backfield. He's going to catch every ball thrown to him. And he understands that maybe on later in the season, in the playoffs, when they really need him, he's going to be a lot fresher than what he's done in past seasons because all that tread that's on his body is not going to be there anymore. So he's excited about his opportunity. The Argos love him. He's a great team player. He's a great role model. He's a great leader, and he's doing a great job at what they're asking him to do.
Milt Stegall with us on Winnipeg Sports Talk. We've talked about most of the teams. I've left Edmonton for the end because it's a sad situation, to be honest. I mean, this is an important market for the Canadian Football League, and I mean, you can't blame fans for saying, I guess we'll see you next year. And I mean, listen, Milt, you've had such a long career. You played on some great teams. You also played on some teams that really, really struggled. I mean, What are you thinking when you see the current state of the Edmonton Elks right now as they're on the precipice of becoming the first team in North American sports history, period, to lose 21 straight games at home if they don't get it done against BC of all teams on the weekend?
Do I have to talk about this again? Do we really have to talk about these Elks? I mean, it's bad. It's bad. And it's one, for me, it's the top story in the league. It's the top story because I thought they were going to come out and have such a great turnaround than what we've seen in Chris Jones' first year. But it's even worse now. You know, you talk about home losses to ask the question, when are they able to get a win at all this year? And I know they're going to be pressing, but I said this on the panel and it hadn't come out yet, but the worst thing you can do is be in this situation, because as an individual player, of course, you're playing for your team, but you also understand that we continue losing like this, they're going to make changes. So players start getting selfish, thinking about, hey, I need to stay on this team because I got bills to pay. I got a mortgage or I got rent to pay. You know, I have a family that I need to take care of. So, of course, I'm thinking about the team, but more so than that, I need to start thinking about my individual performance, because if we're not winning, changes are going to be made. And that's the worst thing that can happen when that starts to seep in, when players start thinking about themselves. But I can't blame them. It's human nature. You know, you have to concern yourself with yourself, because you know changes are going to happen. They can't stand pat. They can't get rid of all the coaches, but they can start making changes on the field. And if you're an individual player, unfortunately, you have to think about that. And that's one of the worst things that can happen within the team.
Milt, why are they in the spot that they are? I mean, Chris Jones has been successful previously. He won a Grey Cup there. I mean, they certainly have some talented players. I mean, is this more a knock on Chris Jones, the general manager, or is there a lot of coaching issues as well? Or does it just come down to the talent that he's put together on that team?
Yeah, it's Chris Jones, the general manager. When you're 0-7, I don't care how bad you think the coaches are. That's all on the personnel, the players on the field. You don't have enough talent. You just don't. And I've been in situations. 1997, Jeff Reinbold. Jeff Reinbold was not a bad coach. Whoever the GM was that year, I don't even remember who the GM was. It was the personnel on the field. And it was a revolving door. They brought in more bad players. They got rid of bad players and brought in more bad players. When you're 0-7, it's not the coaches. It's the players on the field. You do not have enough talent. You may have some talent. You may have some individual players, but as a whole, the talent on the field is not enough. And they're going to start making changes when they and if they continue losing.
Hey, you were on that Reinbold team that you just brought up. I believe the team was 0-10 and then won on a home field. I think Reinbold got carried off the field, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe got a Gatorade shower as well. But I mean, what will one stinking win do for that Edmonton Elks team?
Oh, man.
Especially at home.
It's a big relief. It doesn't take the monkey off your back, but it may take at least one arm from the monkey off your back. The monkey's not choking you right now, so it makes a big difference. It makes the locker room different. And I heard Taylor Cornelius say that, you know, you would not know this team hadn't won a game based on what's in the locker room. Yes, you would, because guys are starting to point fingers. I don't care how positive, optimistic guys are pointing fingers. So that one win alone will make a big difference. And if it happens now, definitely when they're on the brink of breaking the home streak record or whatever at 21, it will make a big difference in the outcome and in the atmosphere and everything that's going on with that organization if they can get that win this upcoming weekend.
Milt Stegall with us. Milt, I know we talked a lot of football. How's soccer dad life these days? You've been hitting the pitch?
Yeah, I've been on the pitch. My oldest son, Chase, and guys got to pray for my wife. He's about to go to DePaul in 2 weeks and start training and go off to college. And my youngest, Colin, is starting high school in a couple of weeks. So I am a soccer dad. Once I cross that border and get to Atlanta, I am a true soccer dad. But I enjoy it so much. I never thought my life would revolve around soccer. I learned so much about it, and I enjoy every moment of it. It's great.
Speaking of it, you see Messi's debut for Miami on Friday?
Yes, that was special. The game up to that point was pretty, mundane, but once they put him in there and he had that free kick and the way it just curved, it's very few whom, if you're not a soccer fan, you don't realize how difficult that is. That's a very difficult free kick, even for Messi. But the fact he was able to pull that off, hey, that was a perfect ending for Inter Miami and everyone involved.
Well, I mean, it's amazing for MLS. I mean, just more and more attention on the league, and you've got an all-time great, one of the best or maybe the best ever.
Yes.
Doing it here in North America can only be good for the league going forward. Hey, before we go, I saw an interesting tweet on the weekend of Chad Johnson giving much respect to the GOAT himself, Milt Stegall. Do you know Chad at all, or is he just a fan of your work from watching? He watches a lot of CFL down in the States.
Yeah, he does. Well, when he was playing, I went out to Montreal and did an interview, and we had some things in common. We both played in Cincinnati. We both knew some of the same people. But as far as being on a friend basis. There's nothing like that. We communicate via social media every now and then, but he's just a big CFL and football fan, and he's a great individual. And if he finds something he likes, he really supports it. So I'm happy that he supports. I'm happy he's still watching, because that gets other eyes watching also. So he's a great ambassador for the league.
Did you wear 85 when you were with the Bengals as well?
No, I wore 84. I wore 84, actually. No, I didn't get to wear 85. But the reason why I wore 85 was because another individual who wore 85 when he was with the Bengals, Tim McGee, who was and he doesn't know this to this day, but he helped me out a lot when I was in Cincinnati, just not on the field, but off the field. So that's why I wore 85. But he doesn't know the reason why I wore 85. He has no idea.
Hey, Milt, you are the best. It's always great to catch up. Keep on doing all the great work with the panel over on TSN, and we'll look forward to hopefully catching up and talking some Bombers with you in the future. Certainly, hopefully after a big win on the 3rd of August against the British Columbia Lions. That is going to be awesome.
Yes, it will, man. I love what you're doing. Keep doing what you're doing, man. Keep it up.
Thanks, Milt. You're the best. There he is, the Turtle Man himself. Our guy, Milt Stegall. And, of course, you can see Milt doing his thing weekly on TSN. Nobody does it better. And great to see everyone in the chat loving the visit from, yes, 85. I love it. And Travis, yes, we are going to put out an invite to Chad Johnson to get him on. That would be a big get. Little CFL talk, little NFL talk. Would certainly love to do that. But thanks again to Milt for coming on. It's always one of our favorite dudes to talk about. Now, listen, we are going to talk to Mike McIntyre coming up in a few minutes. But before that, we're going to head to Boston. Big news today, the retirement of Patrice Bergeron. A little on Bergeron as well as what this means for the Boston Bruins going forward. Before that, though, shout out to our friends over at Vita Health Fresh Market, who have great prices on natural and organic supplements, beauty products, and groceries. And, of course, Winnipeg's largest assortment of local products, too. Barbecue season's in full swing. You know what your grill needs? How about some delicious Vita Market grass-fed bison and beef steaks? And you can wash those down with some Sober Carpenter beer or Zevia sodas. And, listen, lots of day trips, lots of camping, picnics, and whatnot. Pop by Vita Health Fresh Market. Their grab-and-go lunches are delivered fresh twice a week. And this month, get a free sapsucker drink with any Vita Market sandwich or wrap. Vita Health, empowering people to lead healthy lives. 6 Winnipeg locations and online at myvita.ca. If you've needed fencing or overhead doors in the past, you probably talked to Wallace & Wallace as the leaders in both since 1946. If you need the security and protection of a new fence, Wallace & Wallace has it all. Vinyl fences, ornamental, welded wire, chain link, or wood, whatever you need, they've got you covered. And if it's time to replace your garage door, they've also got Winnipeg's largest selection of overhead garage doors. Give them a call at 452-2700. The Wallace & Wallace team will arrange a time to come out and give you a free estimate. You can also visit them online at wallacefences.com or pop down to their showroom on Lawson Road off of Kenniston. Fellas, how's the wardrobe looking? Listen, you're probably never going to look as good as Milt Stegall, but you may need to upgrade that wardrobe to get you looking as great as possible for the end of wedding season and a big fall coming up. And to do that, head on down to F Apparel. Custom suits beginning at $400, along with chinos, golf pants, custom shirts, both tucked and untucked styles, and an incredible selection of menswear accessories. If you're in a wedding party, got a 15% discount for wedding parties, and you can find out more online as well, or you can make an appointment at EPHapparel.com over at 190 Smith Street. And a big shout out to Nick and Nikki for their great support of Winnipeg Sports Talk with the 4 Nick and Nikki DQs. Pop down and see them for all those great new summer blizzard flavors and treats at DQ Northgate, DQ Polo Park, DQ St. Anne's, and the always busy DQ just south of the city down in Niverville. Hit them up on Insta at DQ Manitoba if you want a custom blizzard or ice cream cake for an upcoming event as well. All right, Mike McIntyre coming up in a few minutes, but before we bring in Mike, let's head to Boston and talk a little more about the retirement of Patrice Bergeron, the legacy he leaves behind, but also the hole in the Bruins lineup with just a couple months left in this offseason. Joe Haggerty joins us now on WST. What's going on, Joe? How are you?
What's happening? It's, kind of a bittersweet day. Congratulations to Patrice Bergeron on his retirement. You obviously feel sort of gratitude, thanks for the way he's put together a Hall of Fame career. You know what? I'm getting...
Hold on a sec, Reem. You got that...
I'm getting like or feedback or something.
Yeah, we got to figure that out because... anyways, yeah, we'll just start off again.
Sure.
All right, let's go to Boston and welcome in our guy Hags, Joe Haggerty, to discuss the retirement of Patrice Bergeron and what that means for the Bruins going forward. Joe, it's great to have you on. How big? I can't imagine this was a huge shock, but it still is a reality for a team where, their leader for so many years, an all-time great, saying goodbye to the game and the team.
Yeah, it's kind of a bittersweet thing because there's obviously feelings of gratitude from everybody here in Boston, just what he's done over 20 years. Hall of Fame career, one of the best players of all time, certainly one of the best players to ever play in a Boston Bruins uniform. And there's a level of thankfulness from the fans in the organization for what he's done. But there's also the reality that once Patrice Bergeron retires, and we've known that this was coming the last few years. Obviously, he's 38 years old, just turned 38 earlier this week, that this retirement day was coming soon. It also means it's going to be a complete and total culture change for that team. Obviously, there's some, other players that are going to step up and try to fill in, but you're talking about the heart and soul of this team, the leader of this team, the conscience of this team and this organization, and he's not going to be there in the locker room now anymore. So it's like, there's a feeling of, wow, what a great career he had, and, just appreciation for who he was as a player and a person, but also the stunning reality now that there's a huge void for the Boston Bruins.
Yeah, I just remember watching him at the end of the Florida series, and certainly, it was a shocking upset to begin with. It was on home ice, but you knew that this was, in all likelihood, the way he was handling things, shaking hands with every single player on the team, potentially the end. Is there a logical next guy that just walks into the captaincy for the Boston Bruins with Bergeron gone?
I think it's going to be his line mate, Brad Marchand. I think that's the logical guy to really step in. And, he's a lot more captain-like now than he probably was 10 years ago, right? And, that was Patrice Bergeron kind of rubbing off on him. But I think he's one of the lone Stanley Cup winners that's still on that team. I think he is the lone Stanley Cup winner now that's going to be on that team. And the last holdover from 2011. And he's also a guy that's matured into one of the best players in the NHL. And I think he's the natural guy to get it next, probably for a few years. And then you're talking about David Pastrnak and Charlie McAvoy after that. They're probably still a little young to be taking over that C, but I think Marchand makes a ton of sense for it. And, there's obviously going to be a carrying of the torch and the legacy that Bergeron built and the things that he and Zdeno Chara and other guys built with the Boston Bruins over the last 20 years. But it's going to be difficult. Patrice Bergeron is a unique person. He was a two-way player that gave up offense in order to play Selke Trophy-winning defense every time he was on the ice. Complete competitor up and down the ice. Never cheated the game. Never cheated his position. Just led by example in so many ways by the way he approached things. And he was also, in the last 5 years or so, he'd become such the consummate leader, making sure every player felt welcome in that dressing room, making sure it was an opening environment, making sure it was the kind of place where guys wanted it. It was kind of a destination spot when Bergeron was the captain there. Veterans from around the league wanted to play for the Boston Bruins and kind of see Bergeron and his leadership abilities up close. So, no matter who steps in, whether it's Marchand or anybody else, it's going to be, shoes that they'll never be able to fill. And it's really going to be, hopefully the legacy of what he's taught these young players lives on for a long time because that there's not going to be another one like him in a Bruins uniform for a long time.
It's such a fascinating offseason for a team that, was historically good through the regular season last year. There's a long list of players that are finished the season with the Bruins that are gone. And now you've got this massive hole at center ice. Even if you take out the leadership and all the other things that Bergeron did for the team, he was the number one center on that hockey club for a long, long time. Fill us in on what Don Sweeney is doing right now because I don't think have a ton of cap room, and they've got Trent Frederick and Jeremy Swayman to sign to deals. I guess talk cap first, and then are there options? We've certainly talked a lot about Mark Scheifele and Elias Lindholm here in Western Canada that might be good fits with Boston if they could even consider making moves to make that happen.
Yeah, I mean, now that it's official, maybe something comes loose as far as trying to trade for a traditional number one center. Like Scheifele's a guy that I think has been mentioned quite a bit. People have mentioned him certainly in Boston. Logically, the role he plays, the points he produces, like what he does in Winnipeg, I think on the ice would naturally sort of fill in what, 27 goals, 60 points Bergeron had last year, playing 18 minutes a night, playing in all situations, like those kind of things. Certainly that would be a natural sort of fill in. And right now, if you look at it, like Pavel Zacha is the number one center on the Boston Bruins, right? He certainly, I think, came on last year, had his best offensive season and showed a lot of people that, he was worth that lottery first-round pick that the New Jersey Devils spent on him before they traded him to Boston. So, there's potential there, but he's not ready to be a number one center. He was not a great face-off guy last year, was kind of working on it. Certainly as a two-way player, I think he's coming on, but, both offensively and defensively, I don't think he's going to be a number one center for a Stanley Cup contending team. So, and the Bruins don't have a natural guy in the organization right now, a young player that's ready to step up and sort of fill into that role next year, this year, a couple of years down the line. It's a huge void both now and in the future to be the number one center for the Boston Bruins with Patrice Bergeron retiring. So I do expect that they're going to look around and see what's available trade-wise and sort of walk down these paths of guys like Scheifele and Lindholm. But as you mentioned, the cap is a tough deal for them this year. They may try to have to at least start the year with what they've got and then see where they are on the trade deadline, because $5.5 million they roughly have. $5.5 million is going to Jeremy Swayman and Trent Frederick when their arbitration hearings come in, or if they sign before. Just look at over the last couple of days, Ilya Samsonov, direct comparable to Jeremy Swayman. Their numbers were almost identical, very similar last year. He's going to get around $3.5 million like Samsonov got from the Maple Leafs. And the comparables for Trent Frederick are right around $2.25 million. So that money is going to get eaten up right away that they have left. So they're going to have to find somebody that's willing to take on whatever cap space they're going to have to trade for in a number one center. We all know they don't come cheap. So that's not going to be an easy job for Don Sweeney. It may not be something that gets done this summer or in training camp entering the season. It's going to be interesting to watch.
Well, it is. And I'm looking at it from a Winnipeg perspective. I think the Jets, certainly from what we've heard, are certainly open to moving on from Mark Scheifele. But, you have to make a deal that makes sense for your hockey club. And as much as the fit with Scheif in Boston makes a ton of sense, when you look at this roster right now, it's kind of hard to see what that trade would look like. They've already traded their first-round pick next year. Mm-hmm. When you talk about getting cap going back the other ways, it's obviously not going to be Pasta. It's not going to be Brad Marchand. You've got Charlie Coyle, Zacha, DeBrusk has one more year. He's an unrestricted free agent. Yep. And then you've got three guys signed long-term on the blue line, which I don't think. I guess Brandon Carlo would be a guy that the Winnipeg Jets would be interested in. He's got a modified no trade. Who knows whether the Jets are on that list? I have a hard time wrapping my head around what a deal could potentially look like, considering what the Jets would be looking for and what Boston has the ability to move.
Yeah, I think the way it made the most sense is if Winnipeg was looking for a goalie. I think that's really the one where if all of those dominoes started falling, Swayman or Ullmark, I think Ullmark would be available in the right deal too. And that's certainly somebody the Bruins would I think, at least discuss. A guy winning a Vezina trophy that's probably at the height of his value as far as a player goes. But like you just look at, they're going to be paying close to $9 million in salary cap space to goalies this coming year after Jeremy Swayman signs his deal. And obviously both of those are guys that look like they could be number ones in the league. So that's one of those areas. That and defense are the two areas where the Bruins have excess, where they could trade something in order to have salary cap savings, especially after they already traded Taylor Hall. I don't see them making any more trades up front unless they absolutely have to. So I would suspect Grzelcyk is a guy that they would entertain moving as they're trying to get bigger on the back end. And they look at Vegas, they look at Tampa, the teams that have won recently, and they're all 6'2", 210 pounds across the board. Matt Grzelcyk's 5'9", 175 pounds. He's a great puck mover. They missed him puck moving against the Florida Panthers when he was not in the lineup against the Panthers in the playoffs. So I think that's a guy they would look at. Carlo, if they had to, I don't think they want to move a guy like that. I think they like him and they value him as a penalty killer. But you look at what they have coming up. Mason Lowry is probably the prospect that's closest to making the team and really winning an NHL job. And that's a guy that could come in and replace one of their veteran guys. So I would look on the back end or at the goaltending position as the two places they're most likely to move somebody in order to make a deal like that happen. But I'm with you. Unless something happened where the Winnipeg Jets needed a goalie and wanted a goalie, I don't know that it makes a ton of sense with the pieces involved.
Yeah, and I mean, there is the possibility that they could need a goalie because we've been hearing all summer that Connor Hellebuyck could potentially be on the move, although that really has cooled post-draft with most teams, I think, knowing what the cost it would be to sign Hellebuyck to an extension and what the demand is. Just from a Bruins perspective, and I mean, we have to take the cap into consideration. If Scheifele and Lindholm were both available, who's more attractive to Boston? I think Lindholm's a better 200-foot player. Scheifele's offense is probably a little bit higher. And, of course, salary's important. I mean, Lindholm's on maybe one of the best contracts in the league with one more year at 4.9, at least for this year. I mean, Scheifele is only 6.1, but again, that's another 1.2 and every dollar counts. I mean, do you have a feeling as to which way Don Sweeney would lean if he had the choice of the two players?
Yeah, I suspect it would be Lindholm for the reasons above. And mostly, obviously, the salary cap would come into play a bit, I'm sure. But like if you're moving for either one of those players, you're going to be moving cap space too. So, the cap thing with the Bruins is just a 1-year thing. They just need to get through this coming season, and then the cap is going to go up substantially, and they're getting free of a bunch of contracts. So they're basically in salary cap dire straits for just this 1 year. And that's kind of why they signed a lot of those veteran guys to 1-year deals that they did on July 1, the James Van Riemsdykes and Kevin Shattenkirks of the world, because they're just trying to get through the pain of this one season, and then they can start spending a little bit more. So it's not that huge a consideration. I think it's much more about the 200-foot game, about getting somebody that plays like Patrice Bergeron did, the kind of thing that they're used to, sort of the linchpin of your lineup, having a center that plays at both ends, and plays a responsible game and is going to be out there to kill penalties, out there against the other team's best line, out there on power play, out there when they need a big goal, out there when they need to hold the team down in a 1-goal game in the last minute, like all the stuff that Patrice Bergeron did, and a guy that's great at faceoffs too. That they're looking for all of that. They're not going to find that because there wasn't another Patrice Bergeron in the league, but I would imagine they're going to try to find the closest facsimile to that they can, whether it's Elias Lindholm or somebody else. And who knows, maybe they want to start stockpiling Lindholms. They already got Hampus Lindholm. They might as well go for one more, right?
No doubt about it. What a season he had. It just it's going to be weird. I mean, there's a whole generation of people that, have watched the Boston Bruins and know that 37 is going to be out there taking the opening faceoff on in the final 2 minutes, helping to win hockey games. And, he's going straight to the Hall of Fame. I think we all agree. But just on the way out, he's sort of a quiet and a mild-mannered guy. I mean, certainly not, very loquacious. How will he be remembered amongst Boston Bruins fans and maybe Boston sports fans in general for a guy that just did so much for so long?
He's going to be remembered as one of the best Boston athletes of all time. The guy that took the torch from Tom Brady when Tom Brady left as sort of the face of the city. He was that the last few years. He'd been there for 20 years. He's going to be remembered for the class that he showed at all times. He's going to be remembered for the leadership that he showed at all times, the effort that he showed at all times. He had game-winning goals, scoring a huge game winner against the Toronto Maple Leafs in that big comeback in 2013 when my buddy Dave Gosher had the famous Bergeron call at the end of the game. But he's also going to be known for like the back check that he had against the Blackhawks at Notre Dame in the Winter Classic. That really won the game for them when he tracked a guy down, full hustle going all the way down the ice, broke the play up on the back check, and then the puck goes down the other end and they end up scoring. He's going to be remembered for playing through a punctured lung in 2013 during the Stanley Cup final against the Chicago Blackhawks. Just the amount of toughness that he showed beyond the leadership, beyond the skill, beyond the effort and the will, beyond the welcoming of teammates in. I remember teammates telling me after they left, the lengths that he went to introduce himself, to welcome them into the fold, to say they were welcome here, to if he noticed something was wrong with them or they seemed a little off, he would go up and ask them and talk to them about it. And he showed how much he cared for each and every person that came through there. And he was like that with the employees. He was like that with the media. He was like that with everybody. He treated everybody equally, and everybody was welcome in that room. So, he's going to be remembered in Boston for all of that stuff, but I don't think he's going very far. I think he's a guy that's always going to have a home in Boston. His kids go to school there. They were born there and grown up there. I think he's going to be sticking around. It wouldn't shock me if somewhere down the line he ends up a key member of that Boston Bruins organization too, when he's ready for it, and that's what he wants to do. And if he does that, he's probably going to be one of the best in the business at that too, because he seems to put his everything into what he does. So that heartfelt message that he left today on his retirement and everything that he wrote, that's what's resonated and been there in Boston for the last 20 years. And I think what you're seeing and feeling around the city today is, like I said before, a thankfulness for everything that he did, and kind of a sadness that he's not going to be doing it on the ice anymore, because he was the prototypical Boston Bruins player, one of the biggest winners of his generation, and one of the best Boston Bruins players of all time. And he was a better person than he was a player. And that's really, you can't say anything more about a guy than that. My son is 9 years old. He's going to be 10. He plays center. His favorite player is Brad Marchand, but you know who he plays just like? Patrice Bergeron, because he's watched him, and I've pointed him out as that's the guy you want to be. And there are tons of kids that play hockey in Boston that play the way Patrice Bergeron does, because they've been able to watch it and they've had the privilege of doing that. My son's been one of them. So I thank him for that, just showing my kid the right way to play center, and he's been doing it.
Well, I mean, listen, I think there's a whole generation of Boston Bruins that learned firsthand what it's like to be a winner, what it's like to be a true professional, and they did it from one of the best. And even people that hate the Boston Bruins, I think, have a soft spot for Patrice Bergeron. And certainly the Hall of Fame is going to be getting a good one, but the NHL is losing a great one, as are the Boston Bruins. Be a real interesting rest of the offseason. Hags, great to catch up, man. Enjoy the rest of the summer. Let's do this again soon.
You got it. My pleasure.
All right, good stuff with Hags. Appreciate him jumping on. Mike is on deck. Just before we bring in Mike McIntyre from the Winnipeg Free Press, big thanks to Princess Auto. Of course, we had a great bomber chat with the Milt Stegall earlier, the GOAT, the Turtle Man, if you will. And all of our bomber chats on Winnipeg Sports Talk brought to you by Princess Auto, proud sponsors of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, and of course the Princess Auto tailgate zone 2 hours before every Blue Bomber game. And I can tell you that game coming up a week Thursday with the BC Lions, a huge one for the club, and should be another great atmosphere outside before the game. Princess Auto is also where you'll find the best deals on the most unique assortment of tools and equipment around. Everything you need to complete the projects on your list or start something new is at Princess Auto. Pop by and see them at one of 2 Winnipeg locations, or shop online 24/7, 365 at princessauto.com. Lots going on this summer, and you may be working on your property or thinking about improving it. You got to get down and see Spicy, Joe, and the gang at Consolidated Supply as the leaders in irrigation systems, artificial turf, new and used golf carts is the exclusive club car dealer in Manitoba. They've also got other great options for your property, including hot tubs, spas, and amazing outdoor kitchens as well. Pop by and see them at their showroom, open to the public at 1395 Niagara Road East, or find out more online at cte.ca. Big one for our Canadian women tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. Ireland and Canada going at it in the Women's World Cup. If you're looking for Canada gear, including the sweet new jerseys our women are wearing, you got to get on down to Royal Sports, the #1 merch superstore for fans of pretty much everything. In addition to the biggest selection of Canada soccer gear you'll find pretty much anywhere, tons of pieces of Winnipeg Jets merchandise for the upcoming season, and a great selection of Bomber gear as well. NFL, Major League Baseball, NBA, soccer from around the world. They've got it all, not to mention soccer, baseball, softball, tennis equipment, disc golf, and a huge selection of bikes. Get on down today at Royal Sports, 750 Pembina Highway, and give them a follow on Instagram for the latest merchandise drops and sale information at Royal Sports Pembina. And just before we bring in Mike, was nice to get a little of these. Perfect time for the Jays to be playing on the West Coast. Midweek, late night games. Popped into BP last night, had a couple Appies, a couple Schooners, and watched the Jays with their big win. No better place to get together with your gang for any big game than BP. Schooners, world famous BP wings, gourmet pizzas, and the latest from the BP feature menu. And staying in, you can always order online at bostonpizza.com. All right, let's welcome in Mike McIntyre from the Winnipeg Free Press. Before Mike sets sail and hits the seas next week, what's going on? How's the holidays so far?
Holidays are going great. Got some yard work done. Quality time with the dogs, of course. Quality time with the family, and much more of that coming up when we hit the high seas. We're actually going to Miami on Friday, spending a couple days there. My son and I will take in a Marlins ball game. I haven't been to their park yet. We're going to go on Saturday. They're playing the Tigers that day, and then we hit the high seas for 7 days on Sunday, which should be a lot of fun as we sail through the Caribbean. I just looked; there's no hurricanes in the forecast, which is always a concern this time of year. So it should be smooth sailing and some good quality time. And as mentioned before, Huss, you can almost bank on the Jets doing something newsworthy while I'm far, far out of touch. And perhaps today's development with the Boston Bruins might just expedite that process. I wonder if Kevin Cheveldayoff is getting any phone calls with a 617 area code today or in the coming days.
Well, when we just talked to Hags about this, the Boston Bruins are a really interesting team right now because they've certainly, and we kind of connected Boston with Winnipeg just through logic. They've got one of the biggest holes at center ice in the entire National Hockey League. And, Elias Lindholm and Mark Scheifele, who have been rumored to be potentially available on the market, seemingly would be logical fits. But the more I look at Boston's roster and who they have and the first round pick that they've already traded away for next year, I have a hard time imagining like a really good fit between these teams, something that makes sense for the Winnipeg Jets, unless Connor Hellebuck is moved, because of course they do have a very good one of two good goaltenders, which might be done. Mike, how much would you tie in any possibility of the Jets doing a deal with Boston on Connor Hellebuck going before that to another team as part of a deal?
Yeah, if the Jets are not moving Connor Hellebuck, at least within this next year, then they don't really have the need for a Jeremy Swayman, for example, who is a name that's been thrown out there. Now, if Connor Hellebuck is leaving in 1 year from now, regardless of whether the Jets move him before the season or at the trade deadline, I suppose a guy like Jeremy Swayman could become a valuable addition in any event, because they're eventually and in the very near future going to need some help in the goaltending department. But for sure, the idea of moving Scheifele and getting a goaltender back doesn't seem nearly as likely if there's not an immediate hole at the goaltending position. And, you look at the Bruins, Huss, they're coming off a record-setting season, regular season. And, now not only have they got a massive hole at center, they've lost, obviously they lost Tyler Bertuzzi, did not re-sign him. They moved Taylor Hall in a cap dump. Like, all of a sudden the Boston forward group is not nearly what it was just a couple months ago. And I can't imagine the Bruins are entering a rebuild, going from where they just were. But it's been a dramatic turn of events for sure. And of course, David Krejci, they may have another hole at center depending on what happens with Krejci. Maybe they're in the market for Scheifele and Lindholm and not just one of them. Maybe they're looking at both. But, that when you come to centers, of course, those are the two big names out there. And so you wonder if there's a bit of a derby competition, if you will, to see what the asking price is between those two players. And, again, I think the Jets asking price, as you just pointed out, might very much depend on what happens with Connor Hellebuyck. And I'm just not convinced, Huss, that we're going to get any Connor Hellebuyck closure anytime soon. I mean, I feel stronger with every passing day that Connor Hellebuyck, at the very least, starts the season with the Winnipeg Jets. Whether he ends the season with the Jets, I guess, is another question. But, if he starts the season with the Jets, are the Jets then content to also start the season with Mark Scheifele? And I guess unless they get an offer that blows the doors off, I think the answer to that is probably yes as well.
Who's more likely to be dealt before the start of the season in your mind? And how likely is that, even as we talk about it certainly seems like those numbers have diminished greatly post-draft and free agency on both sides.
Yeah, I think the percentages are getting, as I said, lower by the day, but I still would almost chalk it up to Mark Scheifele being the more likely of the two. If one of the two is getting moved, that it would be Scheifele. I mean, part of that, yes, the Jets went and signed Laurent Brossoit, of course, but they didn't re-sign David Riddick, so I don't think we can read anything into that. That's just a straight replacement for the backup they had. Colin Delia was an interesting signing, I suppose, because some viewed that as the Jets almost signing two potential NHL backups in Brossoit and Delia. I think the more likely scenario, though, was Delia is just meant as insurance to be the third stringer, to go down and work with what they have on the Moose, of course, at this point, Oskari Salminen, and likely Thomas Milic, the kid they just took from the Dub, the reigning WHL goaltender of the year, that he's probably fifth on the depth chart to start his pro career, and he might go start in the ECHL maybe at the start of this coming season. So I don't think by signing Brossoit and Delia, that in and of itself was a tell that the Jets feel that they were moving Connor Hellebuyck, because I honestly don't think they would go into the season with that as the goalie tandem. But then that brings us back to the Bruins and Scheifele and talk of perhaps Jeremy Swayman. Obviously, a Swayman-Brossoit pairing would be a lot more attractive than a Brossoit-Delia pairing. But it does seem like there's a bit of dominoes here. And right now, both those big dominoes, Scheifele and Hellebuyck, they're still standing. And as I say, I think the odds of either of them falling before camp are fairly slim at this point. But if I had to wager, I would say Scheifele is the more likely of the two to get moved. And what happened today with the Bruins probably at least ticks that up a few percentage points.
Yeah, I mean, I think more people like us will be talking about it.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's probably already been conversations between Chevy and Don Sweeney. But again, I mean, I go back to this roster and I have a hard time looking at a deal that sort of makes sense. Listen, a guy like Brandon Carlo, would he look good on the Jet blue line on the right side for the next 4 years? Absolutely. He's only making $4.1 million, and he's got a modified no trade clause for the next 2 seasons, a 10-team no trade list. Good chance that the Jets might be on that list, so I'm not even sure if he's a possibility.
Right.
It's not going to be McAvoy or Hampus Lindholm. It's not going to be Pasternak. It's not going to be Brad Marchand. It's probably not Charlie Coyle, who, of course, is, very important player on that club. And he's at 31. Is that a guy the Jets are looking to bring back? Probably not. So you wonder. I mean, Jake DeBrusk's been a guy that's mentioned. He's on an expiring contract this year.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Jake DeBrusk is an interesting name because I know for a fact the Jets had sniffed around Jake DeBrusk previously. Of course, Jake DeBrusk very publicly made a trade request, which he then went on to later rescind. And the Jets were absolutely interested in Jake DeBrusk. Obviously, Jake DeBrusk didn't end up moving. In fact, he signed a short-term extension with the Bruins. But as you point out, Huss, he is a pending UFA 1 year from now. Now, again, which is exactly, of course, what Mark Scheifele is, a pending UFA in a year from now. I just think if you're the Jets, you wouldn't do a deal like that unless you felt like you were going to re-sign Jake DeBrusk to an extension. Jake DeBrusk is coming off a career best season. 27 goals last year. That tied his career high, and 50 points. And he did that, which is a career high. And he did that in just 64 games. And he's still only 26, and he's a Western Canadian kid, from Edmonton, former 14th overall draft pick. So I suppose if you're the Jets, if you could turn an expiring Scheifele into Jake DeBrusk with an extension, and we know what the Jets are likely trying to do around here, Huss. They're trying to remain competitive. I suppose that is a deal that might make some sense. And the Bruins, they trade a winger in DeBrusk and they get a center. Again, I would think, though, they would want certainty of an extension as well and not just a rental. So a lot of moving parts, but that is one name if you're looking at kind of the active roster in addition or in lieu of Brandon Carlo, who is a defenseman that I think there at least been some chatter about, but I don't know how realistic, as you say, modified no trade. Are the Jets on that? Certainly the Jets would love the fact that he signed for this coming year plus 3 more at a very reasonable 4.1, and he's a right shot defenseman. So a lot of things that the Jets would obviously like very much. Whether or not that would be a fit, I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah. I mean, if it's even a possibility, I mean, listen, would it be a fit? Yeah. Now, again, I guess that brings us to another conversation about the Jet blue line. There's still, you would have to think, a shoe to drop or two. Right. Well, I'll ask you right off, what do you make of Logan Stanley's situation right now? I mean, needing a contract, reportedly asking to be moved last year when he'd sort of fallen out of the Winnipeg Jets top 6. He's been around here for a long time. He's certainly had a chance to play in 3 seasons, Mike, and only ended up being in 19 games, partly because of injury, but partly because he couldn't crack the lineup.
Right.
Does he sign? Is Logan Stanley in Winnipeg Jet training camp in a couple months?
Well, I just don't think Logan Stanley would have much ground to stand on to, for example, hold out. This isn't a Jacob Trouba of a few years ago.
I wasn't suggesting a holdout at all. I mean, just the potential that the Jets move on from him. Yeah. Or if that was going to happen, it would have happened already, and we should expect him to be here.
Yeah, it's interesting that he was arbitration eligible and he did not elect for arbitration. I mean, I think that alone tells you he probably knew that he wouldn't have much of a case. Just coming off the year that he just had, I don't expect his number is going to come in much beyond the contract that just expired. So, money's not an issue here, regardless of whether he signs as an RFA with the Jets or with another organization. But yeah, I mean, I just think that there's not much of a trade market at this point for Logan Stanley, because I think, Huss, if there was, it was likely then we would have seen him moved maybe at the draft at the very least, for even if it was a late round pick where the Jets could at least turn a disgruntled, Logan Stanley, who's not even in the top 6 mix anymore. If they could have turned him into a future asset, I think they probably would have done that. There was some talk, of course, of him maybe being involved in the Dubois deal. That ultimately didn't come to fruition. And so I think Logan Stanley, he's in a kind of a similar spot as Jansen Harkins is in the forward group, a drafted and developed player who's kind of lost his spot, his starting spot, and would like a change of scenery. I think the Jets, just like Harkins, would probably accommodate that request, but they're not going to just completely give him away for nothing. And if basically nothing is being offered, I just think they're almost at a standstill at this point. So will that change as we get closer to camp, as teams reassess where they are, maybe some injuries? Again, Logan Stanley, there's a lot of tools there that GMs around the league would be intrigued by. And the fact is, he's going to come in on his new deal as an RFA at a very reasonably low number. So we're not talking about a budget buster here. So, yeah, I think if you're the Jets, you're still looking around to see where you could maybe find a home for him. But I also think that the bigger priority for the Jets isn't so much what you do with Logan Stanley. It's what you potentially do with a bigger piece on your blue line. And are you running it back with essentially the same veteran core that you've had now for a couple seasons that really hasn't been good enough collectively. And now you're doing it, Huss, with two of those guys, Brendan Dillon and Dylan DeMello, in the same boat as Mark Scheifele and Connor Hellebuck and Nino Niederreiter, and that they are also pending UFAs one summer from now. I think we've been expecting a move or two when it came to a veteran piece to perhaps create an opening for a Declan Chisholm or a Ville Heinola, but also to give the blue line a bit of a different look. So far, all is quiet on that front. So going back to what you asked me a few minutes ago, the percentage or the likelihood of a Hellebuck or Scheifele trade, as remote or small as I'd say those percentages are, I still think a defenseman being moved trumps those two in terms of a higher percentage of it happening.
Yeah, the defense is fascinating because, I mean, you got Morrissey, Schmidt, Pionk, Dillon, DeMello, Sandberg as your top six right now on the depth chart, all with contracts. Capobianco has another year on his deal.
A guy they love in that 7-8 role who can sit in the press box for weeks at a time, won't complain, good practice guy, good teammate. And you would think that they have him slotted in a pretty similar role this year, Huss.
Well, you do, except, I mean, to me, Declan Chisholm's a guy that might change that a little bit because he is a player that I think that does a lot of the things that Kyle Capobianco brings to the table.
Yeah. Maybe
with a higher ceiling and a higher potential once they get games in. And do you have Declan Chisholm sit in the press box when Capobianco has the opportunity to go in? Would he be a guy that would get his first crack to go in if a player is injured? And then, I mean, the bottom line is you want these young guys to play.
Yeah.
I don't think we talked to enough people at the draft and asked if Declan Chisholm was available on waivers, would he get picked up? And it was a resounding yes from pretty much everyone that we talked to that knows the league and the American Hockey League as well. So, I mean, again, you put that into a situation where it's not necessarily needs to be an everyday player, but you don't want him basically doing what Capobianco did, was sitting long stretches without playing. So, I mean, it's fascinating. And I could see Capobianco potentially put on waivers. I'm not sure whether he would get picked up, and maybe he's a guy with the moose that you can bring up when you need.
Yeah.
But it's pretty clear that this team, I think, is going to be carrying 8 defensemen when we begin the season. And that guy on the 8th spot on the depth chart could be spending long time in the press box unless someone's moved, or, of course, there's always the potential of injury.
And Huss, if we had to sit here today and you asked me to rank 7, 8, 9, because I think the 6 that you just mentioned, that's your top 6 right now without a trade. Morrissey, Schmidt, Pionk, Dillon, DeMello, Sandberg. And I just rank them in order of their salaries that they make, not necessarily their importance to the team. But that's your top 6. Those guys are going to be in your I expect if everyone's healthy, those are the 6 guys on opening night. And again, unless one of them is traded between now and then. But then if I had to rank 7, 8, 9, I'd have Declan Chisholm likely as your number 7 right now. Logan Stanley right now is probably your number 8, and Kyle Capobianco would be your number 9. And unfortunately, that means a guy like Ville Heinola, and this has nothing to do with merit. It's more contract situation. He's probably number 10 right now because unlike the 9 guys that we would have just listed ahead of him, he doesn't need waivers. And so the Jets likely have him parked with the Moose again to start the year unless they create a couple openings that could elevate him. Or in fact, if he's a guy that ends up getting moved because the Jets feel like they could turn him into something else. That's why I think the blue line to me is maybe the most interesting thing right now when it comes to the Jets. Not that the Hellebuck and Scheifele situations aren't intriguing. I just think it's more likely we see movement when it comes to the blue line before the season starts than we do when it comes to the number 1 center or the number 1 goalie.
Mike McIntyre, the Winnipeg Free Press, with us on Winnipeg Sports Talk. You know, like looking ahead to next season, if nothing really does happen before camp, you've got this, this defense situation at which somebody is going to be being put on waivers, whether it's Stanley, who'll get picked up, I would imagine for sure. I mean, just the size of his alone, someone
Yeah.
will take a chance and see, oh, maybe we can turn this guy into something. I'd say less so with Capobianco.
Agreed.
But you're going to have 8 defensemen on the roster. If you have Kellebuck come back and you have a Scheifele come back and nothing changes in their contracts, like there's no extensions, you've got your most important player and best player in Hellebuck as an unrestricted free agent. You've got your top center potentially on that deal. You've got Nino Niederreiter. You've got Dylan DeMello. You've got Brendan Dillon, all on expiring contracts. And to be honest, of those 5, I think the most likely to sign an extension is Nino Niederreiter.
Agreed.
But Mike, I guess this is the $1 million question. If the Jets are doing exactly what they apparently want to be doing, and that's being competitive and win hockey games and be a playoff team, what the hell happens at the deadline if none of that changes? And you've got significant offers for players like that, but a team that believes they've got a chance to be competitive in the playoffs. I mean, could you see the Jets just running into the playoffs and seeing what happens at the end of this year at the expense of probably some pretty significant assets coming back on deadline deals for guys that certainly would have significant value?
Well, that would definitely be living in the moment, Huss. Not the best asset management, that's for sure. And that's probably an understatement. It would also, in a way, be sort of contrary to a lot of what the Jets seemingly have been about, which is drafting and developing, and certainly not just letting valuable pieces leave for nothing. You don't often see a superstar just walk for nothing. We saw it obviously with Johnny Gaudreau, kind of seemed to take the Flames by surprise. And certainly 1 year into that, it seems like the Flames, took a significant step back last year. I realized there were other things that happened around that team. But you'd hate to just lose Scheifele and Hellebuck and then throw in, as you say, some of these other players. Granted, Niederreiter, Dillon, and DeMello were all acquired via trades, but the Jets gave up assets to bring those players in. You'd at least like to try and recoup an asset or two if those players are not staying here beyond next year. But you're right, it creates, I suppose, in a way, Huss, an extraordinary amount of pressure and a significant microscope for this team to see how they start the year. If they in fact start with all of these guys on expiring contracts and significant players, how they perform in those first few months of the season will be fascinating to watch. And then, as you say, it creates quite the dynamic. What if the Jets are in a playoff spot? Would they pull the plug and essentially wave the white flag and start selling off? I mean, I don't imagine that would be a very good message to the fan base that you've asked to now invest in your product.
Well, I mean, there'd be a lot of fans, I think, that would be on side with that. I'll tell you the message that it wouldn't be good to the guys in the room that have worked their asses off all year to be in a position where they feel they've got a shot and compete.
Well, and I suppose then if you're the Jets, maybe you hope that if things are going so well that you can't fathom the idea of moving any of these pieces, is the idea then that you circle back to those players who maybe some of them weren't going to sign here long term. They were going to explore free agency. Did they reevaluate? Did they say, actually, maybe the grass isn't greener somewhere else? The grass is pretty green here right now. So I guess it could work both ways, right? I mean, if things are going so well, you maybe create an environment where you hope that these players don't want to leave, and you don't want to let them leave because you've got a really good thing going. And I guess if things aren't going that well, then you sell them off, and maybe there's a market. And we saw what Kevin Cheveldayoff was able to do with a guy like Andrew Kopp, who the Jets went into that season a couple of years ago with Andrew Kopp on an expiring contract. And I think we would all agree the Jets made out pretty well. It may turn out that they made out really, really well, depending on the development of guys like Brad Lambert and Elias Salmonson. But certainly the early returns on that deal are encouraging. But Kopp was a bit of an isolated case where, that year there wasn't Kopp plus 4 other guys all in that same boat. I guess Paul Stastny was us. very different situation, though. Paul Stastny was 35 years old. And, I guess you could say maybe the Jets shouldn't have hung on to him the way they did, but would they have got much for him? Probably not. This would be a bit of a different animal. It's going to create, there's a lot of intrigue now about what the team does, but if it's status quo to start the year, I suspect the intrigue will only increase. And not only will we as media and as fans be watching what the team does, no doubt a lot of GMs around the league will have a lot of eyes on Winnipeg for the possibility that there could be a fire sale at the trade deadline with some very valuable parts.
Well, and to be honest, I think for the Jets, to maybe avoid that situation, I think, it might be prudent to be more aggressive in making those deals. I mean, it doesn't have to be, I guess, for the first game of the season, but in October, in November, as teams sort of shaking out, you might have guys get hurt, guys going LTIR, because you do get into a very dangerous territory if you push it to the deadline, albeit if you have that plan that you are going to move those players, it probably is the best time to do it. I mean, I think we can say history tells us that players like a Connor Hellebuyck or a Mark Scheifele, without term on the end of their deals, can still go for major, major returns at the deadline with 2/3 of their yearly salary already paid out.
For sure, but there's also risk for the Jets the longer you wait, because, of course, this is a contact sport. Players get hurt. And imagine how that would play if the Jets are out of the playoff race and all signs point towards them moving on from certain guys, but they hang on too long, and then that player or players suffer a significant injury that basically knocks them out for the rest of the year. Now you've waited too long, and it's come back to bite you. So a lot of risk for sure, and probably much of what is keeping Kevin Cheveldayoff and company up at night, kind of tossing and turning over.
No doubt about it. Listen, dude, I know you got to run. Thanks for the chat as always, and have a great week on the high seas. We'll talk to you when you get back.
You bet, Huss. Looking forward to it. And we'll touch base right after the long weekend.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for the moment when you finally get to a Wi-Fi area after a couple days on the seas and find out that Hellebuyck and Scheifele were traded in a package about an hour after you got out of contact area.
Bank on it.
Take it easy, dude. Thanks so much. All right, there's Mike McIntyre with us here on the on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Tomorrow night's our big night, folks. Gold Eyes game. Shout out to everyone that has bought tickets. We are looking forward to seeing all of you there. We're going to put together a few prize packages for some folks. Come thirsty, come hungry. We'll see you there at 6:30 p.m. And of course, the Gold Eyes are back, and they do begin this week-long homestand with a ton of promos, including tonight's Ukrainian night with the 6:30 first pitch. Tomorrow, as I said, we'll look forward to see all of you. If you missed out on getting tickets, but you do want to come, just go to the box office or go online and try and get a ticket in and around Section D. But we'll all be along the left field line near Craft Beer Corner. Would love to see a few more people jump on. And thanks to everyone that supported it. Should be a great week for the Gold Eyes and a great week for our event. And of course, while we're there tomorrow, I have a feeling much of the WST crew will be enjoying some of our favorite Little Brown Jug. Of course, the Gold Eyes is all local beer, and nothing better when it comes to local beer than Little Brown Jug. 1919 there, as well as the generic lager, which has just been a great addition to the lineup for the summer. And of course, some other great ones down at Craft Beer Corner as well. Pop down and see them. Brewery, tap room, beautiful new patio. You can get all your Little Brown Jug favorites on William Avenue in the Exchange, or pick up Little Brown Jug anywhere that sells great beer. Looking forward to a big event coming up tonight at Breezy Bend. Should give congratulations, though, to Elmhurst, the Elmy team, with the big three-peat in the Mundy Putter League last night. Some excellent young players on both those teams from Breezy and from Elmhurst. But tonight, Mark Stone, the guest of honor. Well, the Stanley Cup, the guest of honor, brought by Mark Stone. Should be a great night. Looking forward to being involved in that event. Of course, if you're looking for a great long-term home for you and your family, check out Breezy Bend. Get on the waiting list for next year. Give our pal Corey Johnson a call over at the course, or find out more online at breezybend.ca. And a big shout out to our friends at Aikens Lake as well. Heading out there in a couple weeks. Cannot wait. My favorite 3 or 4 days of the year, every year. If you're thinking about an amazing fly-in fishing experience where you can be on the water in less than 2 hours from the city of Winnipeg, Aikens Lake is the spot. And as incredible as the world-class fishing is, the world-class hospitality awaiting you from the Tren family and the Aikens team is what really puts it over the top. AikensLake.com online and at Aikens Lake on X. Let's get Michael Remis in here.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what? I'm. You know what? Hey, listen. I'm just going along with the rebranding right now, and I'm just trying to remember that we spend a lot of time talking or communicating on Twitter. It's not Twitter anymore. It's X, or at least for the next little while until Microsoft sues their pants off because apparently they have the trademark.
Yeah, look forward to see what happens. I'm still so thrown off. Like, I'm used to, we DM all the time, and everyone knows I got like 30 tabs open, and I'm so used to seeing the blue bird as the icon on my tab. And now I'm like, where's Twitter? Where's Twitter? It's this black box with this X I can barely see. It's really tough for me. It's a bit of an adjustment here. So
by the way, 99% of programs, apps, or anything that have X as their icon is porn.
Yeah, well, that's I joked yesterday that posting videos on Twitter are called like X videos, but I think that's also a name for porn site, is it not? X videos?
It probably is.
I saw people joking about it on Twitter, so I'm regurgitating it.
By the way, shout out to everyone in chat talking about how excited we are to use cash tomorrow at the game. Absolutely. Guess what? They take cash. Cash is king. Cash is king. Dunk Dynasty, Rob Pepper, Trav, we'll see you tomorrow. The big wad. And
you're gonna pay cash?
Plenty of things to spend it. I love paying cash. Always paying cash at the ballpark.
I'll have to take a picture of you paying cash for your barbecue bowl. We're looking at the weather watch. It says that better be during the day tomorrow. Risk of strong thunderstorms. We will be there.
Ooh.
Let me see the 36-hour forecast here. I do want to say though, people have emailed out the tickets. If you haven't accepted them, they're in your inbox. I know someone emailed me and said, "Hey, where's my ticket?" And I said, "Yeah, check your junk," and it was in his junk. There's a couple people who haven't accepted, so make sure you do. And if you haven't got it,
I was one of them. I have accepted though. I have accepted since.
If you haven't got, then send us an email, winnipegsportstalk@gmail.com. There was someone in chat who said they never got it, but they never placed an order on their website, which is why they never got the ticket. But we're in section D. Maybe last minute we can add some. I'm looking at the weather. It says Wednesday evening, risk of strong thunderstorms. It's not ideal.
Those will just blow in. And by the way, it doesn't really matter because we all know that there's a storm shield around the city of Winnipeg. So
yes.
Although I was actually up really late last night because incredible light show in the city last night. I didn't get a ton of rain around my spot. A couple times it rained a little hard. But man, the light, the sky was just absolutely popping with tons and tons of lightning of all sorts. So, hopefully that won't be the case tomorrow. But we'll get out there, we'll get after it. If we have to wait a little bit, we'll have a cold one and maybe a barbecue bowl or some pierogies or something like that. That certainly will not be an issue. So yeah, we'll see you all tomorrow night. And again, if you do want to get a last-minute ticket, just try and get somewhere in section D when you're talking or ordering online or talking to the folks over at the ballpark. All right, let's get over to Coolbet lines for tonight. Big win. Did you stay up late last night for that Jays game, Remis? I know you're a big West Coast guy. I loved it.
I was busy putting together some stuff, so working on the show. I actually forgot about it, so I was not watching it, but I did see that they won when you met. I don't know. I was out of the loop. I was so laser focused on doing stuff for this.
Well, you did a great job on that. It actually turned out quite well.
Yeah, so I actually forgot, but I did hear the storm here was pretty awesome, and I missed the ball. I'm actually disappointed. I didn't usually have it on a tablet, but my baseball, I don't know. It's since I had kids, Huss, I haven't watched as many games. I don't know. I don't know why that would be.
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, they're certainly not up at that time.
Yeah, exactly. You're right. I mean, I wasn't doing any kids at midnight or whenever the game was on, so I'll have to tune in this week.
Lots of baseball tonight. Jays are plus 123 underdogs, and I believe it's Bassett against Urias. I actually like the Jays' chances tonight. I thought they really gutted that one out last night. Some great relief pitching, including that newcomer 92. So we're going to jump on the Jays. And actually, we did crank out a little lock shop partner parlay. By the way, shout out to everyone that rolled with us on that CFL parlay on the weekend. Nice little plus 725 banger. All right, we've got it up. Oh, it's gone down a little bit. I guess the odds have changed. But we've got the Tampa Bay Rays to win tonight. The Houston Astros to win. They're at home to the Texas Rangers. And the Jays over the Los Angeles Dodgers. When we put that in, it was plus 474. So we got a boost over 5-1, plus 505 right now. You can check that in the Coolbet exclusives. And tomorrow morning, set your alarms, everybody. Canada and Ireland, massive, massive tilt. Really a must-win for our Canadian women at the World Cup if they want to be moving on. They are a favorite. A minus 159 favorite. Ireland 5-1 underdog and a draw plus 270. Canada gotta have it. So if you do want to back Canada, minus 159 on the home draw away board. Big win by Colombia last night. They beat the Koreans. And shout out to the Philippines, who I believe won their first ever game today, beating New Zealand 1-0. Other games tomorrow include the USA taking on Netherlands. USA a favorite to win the tournament, but only minus 133 to win that game versus the Dutch tomorrow. So whether you're looking at the 3M Open, by the way, we did make golf picks today in the Lock Shop. Check that out and subscribe at Lock Shop Bets on YouTube. So we've got 3M Open picks available, Women's World Cup, and Major League Baseball. And one other thing, actually, Remis, this is quite interesting and just kind of a fun discussion point. But we've also got odds for the Major League Baseball trade deadline. And a number of players, like who they'll make their first appearance for after August 1st.
God.
And obviously, Ohtani is the guy we want to talk about. Minus 270 that he is with the Angels still. And then the favorites to get him, Dodgers, Giants, Orioles, and even the last place New York Yankees. Any other team is that's not named. Braves are 22, Phillies 25, Red Sox 28. Any other team 17-1. And I do wonder, I mean, what the hell that package would look like to get Ohtani out of the Angels, even with an expiring contract.
I don't know, Huss. It is going to be wild what happens. I think it seems like he might stay and they want to try to re-sign him. That contract is going to be the story of the MLB offseason, so I'm looking forward to this. These are some hilarious bets here. The team Verlander makes his first appearance for. I think doesn't even know trade. I know the Mets. It hasn't.
I know Scherzer does.
Okay.
Scherzer does.
Man, they have so many pitchers. Holy crap! I've never seen bets like this. This is hilarious. Team Stroman.
That's awesome. Stroman 10-1 for Toronto.
Yeah.
Been
And
talked the Stroh show could be coming back to the 6. Lucas Giolito from the White Sox, and no one's expecting that he's going to still be with the White Sox. I mean, they don't even list them as a possibility. It starts with the Dodgers at 2-1.
Yeah, same with Stroman. Oh no, the Cubs are there. That's funny about Giolito. I have him in 2 fantasy leagues, so I'm invested in that. Man, Goldschmidt, yeah, been a terrible year for the Cardinals, although that's minus 909 there, so they expect him to be. Man, this is so funny. Bellinger, Tim Anderson, Blake Snell. Yeah, trade deadline less than a week away. So Ohtani, all eyes on him. That's for sure.
Yeah. If you're interested in this, get on over because these sort of things can change very quickly. So if you see a number that you like, jump on it. It's all over at Coolbet in the Major League Baseball section. Use the promo code WST if you haven't played at Coolbet before for a 100% bonus on your first deposit up to $200. All right, Reem, horse picks tonight. What do you got? I've got mine locked, loaded.
I'm good.
And ready to go for today. After not doing anything last night, a couple close calls, but nothing.
My pick sucked yesterday. If there was an award for getting like 2 of 3 of a trifecta or triactor, I would have done that a couple times. If you got an award for having an exacta, but in the wrong order, I would have won that too. But you don't get paid out for that. So, anyways, back to the.
I have no races until race 4. So if you've got any of the first 3.
I have one. I just have one, and then I'm 5, 6, 7. One, I see the low odds. I don't think it's going to pay very much. Mia Bear, I don't care. That's my horse. $5 to win. Mia Bear. Race 1, horse 2. I know that it's not paying a lot. I know. I don't care. I'm confident.
Oh, going up against Lady Cop.
Yeah, I know. That was a tough call, but that's what I'm going with.
The big races are kind of sort of stacked towards the end. My first pick actually is in race 4. Number 8, Tale of Atreides. Tale of Atreides to win in race number 8. And then we move on to race number 5. And I have another win wager on Orcadian Storm, number 3 in race number 5. You got anything in 5?
I have that in a trifecta box. 2, 3, 6. Murdo, Orcadian Storm, and Tis Funny. Bit of a chalk one there. I don't care. I'm gonna eat it and go for it here.
Alrighty. So now we've got our triactor boxes, or at least I do. Race number 6. We are rolling with the 2, 4, 8. So that's a lot of bling, which is the favorite. Astar Tobe, which opened at 8-1, and Cordillera, which is a 10-1 shot. So a 2, 4, 8 should be a nice one if that comes through. Although one of the $1 triactors last night, Remo, was almost $1,000.
What? Well, I saw it. I noticed that because I kept doing the tractor boxes, and it would be like the 2 favorites in some crazy long shot. There was a couple times, so I'm not too surprised they would say it. But still, like a $1 bet pays 1,000. Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly what I'm saying. Or I mean, if you boxed it, it would be a $6 bet. But you're doing when you're doing $6, it's 6 $1 bets. You're just doing every combination. Yeah, you know it. Did you have anything in 6?
I do. I have. How could I not bet on this horse? It sounds like a winner, Flying to the Line. Come on, that's the winner right there. It's gonna be Flying to the Line and winning. So I got $5 on that one.
Nice. All right, and then our final race is race number 7. It's a big one, and my buddy's horse, Ride 'em. I told you this story about how they sold the horse to one of their other friends. He won the race, and then they bought him back. So essentially, they sold it, watched their buddy win, and then have reclaimed Ride 'em. And Ride 'em's had a good year, so I said I will definitely back Ride 'em. But race 7, I've got a 4, 8, 9. So Bottle of Smoke, number 4. Ride 'em, number 8, and A2 Babu, number 9. 4, 8, 9. Hopefully that could be a winner. That could be a nice one, considering that those horses are a little further down. What do you got for race 7?
Yeah, I thought about A2 Babu, but I went with this one, Bottle of Smoke to win, horse 4. Look, he's got 18%, paying 5-1, big field. 18% win percentage. I'm like Bottle of Smoke here, so let's do that.
Nice. I actually like Bottle of Smoke as well to win. But as I say, it could be second or third as long as it comes with Ride 'em and A2 Babu. Post time tonight is 7:30 p.m. You can also catch it on the Assiniboia Downs YouTube channel and check out Kirk and Stretch with all their picks coming up at the 6:45, right before everything gets going. Good show today. Fun to have Joe Haggerty on. I got to tell you that the Bergeron news, and we'll spend more time talking about Bergeron, I'm sure. I mean, obviously, the most important thing to Winnipeg fans is what this means for Boston, potential trades and whatnot. But, man, we were lucky to watch that career, man. 20 years of greatness in Boston. And as Joe said, really took the torch from Tom Brady as the face of Boston sports, which comes with a lot, I think, as we know. But guy won literally everything there is to win and did it with class the entire time. Even people that hate the Bruins, I think, have a soft spot for the greatness that was 37.
Yeah, it seems like a great guy. Loved hearing the comments from Joe, and I know 20 years in Boston, that is a long time. And I saw they were interviewing Patriots players about him and what he meant to the city. One Stanley Cup, they lost 2, incredible legacy. We talked about Team Canada as well. What a career, and I think still could have kept going. How about this game? Won the Selke, but time for him to hang it up. Played through crazy injuries, and I think after 20 years, I've done it, and he took the low salary last year, so he clearly wasn't playing for money anymore, even though he probably could have made at least double what he made last year. So good for him, and I'm looking forward to seeing what kind of what they do for him. Is how quickly do they put up a statue? He's clearly going into the Hall of Fame. Do they rename the Selke after him? I'm not in favor of that, but he did win it 5 times or 6 times, Huss? I mean, that's crazy. What a career.
6-time winner. He is synonymous with the best two-way forwards in the game. And a lot of ways, and it's funny, Joe talking about his kid. I mean, not only just kids, but I think a lot of guys that have been in that dressing room have had their careers sort of formed by playing along with Patrice Bergeron and seeing the example that he sets every day.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talk so much about the culture that they tried to create there. Just Chara mentioning in an interview that if you're a rookie, they don't treat you any differently than any other player, and they wanted to make everyone feel welcome in that dressing room. So, Marchand, the last guy left from the 2011 Stanley Cup, it's kind of funny, and they traded Quick in LA, so they have Kopitar and Doughty from their Cup teams, but Chicago moving on from Taves and Kane this offseason. This era is ending of the 2010s dynasties where and you can argue dynasties or not, but teams that were really good for a really long time and won Stanley Cups and made Stanley Cup appearances, like the Blackhawks, Kings, and Bruins. A lot of those key players, we're getting just a sign we're getting older, Huss.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt about that. Yes, just what we need. More signs. It is going to be bizarre to see a C on Brad Marchand's chest, assuming that happens. But as Joe said, probably a little bit more captain-like than he might have been earlier in his career. Late night game for the Jays tonight, 9:10. Goldeyes get going at 6:30. Assiniboia Downs gets going at 7:30. So you got plenty of options tonight. Join us tomorrow. Should be a great show. We should have some footage of the Cup coming back to Winnipeg with Mark Stone and a chat with him. And Seabears coach Mike Taylor going to jump on as well and talk about the final regular season game and fill us in on the path to a championship for his Winnipeg Seabears. Looking forward to that. Huge thanks to the sponsors that make this show happen every day. And, of course, all of you, if you're with us on YouTube and you haven't already, hit that thumbs up. Make sure you hit that red subscribe button. Tell a friend about WST. And, everyone, get ready. I look forward to seeing all of you that have got tickets tomorrow at the ballpark for a Winnipeg Sports Talk night. Hopefully you can get all the rain out a little earlier. Should have a great night down at the ballpark on what should be a beautiful and hot day for baseball. Having a couple beers and some great eats down at Shaw Park. We'll see you tomorrow at 1 p.m. on tomorrow's edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk. Thanks for hanging with us, everyone, and have a great night.
Oh, my God! Oh! Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.